CPOV. CertainPOV.com.
Before we get started, I just want to give a special thank you and shout out to our podcast network, Certain POV. You can find us and all their other awesome shows at certainpov.com. That's CERTAINPOV.com. Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of How the Fuck, the talk show turned podcast where we chat with folks who know what the fuck they're doing and ask them how the fuck they got there. I'm your host, Katie DeMatteis.
I'm also your host, Ben Martin Mooney.
And I'm your thirdliest host, Zeki Alakaya.
Today, we are joined by Anya Combs, a seasoned professional in the gaming world and professional musician. Anya's experience in the gaming industry dates back to Addicting Games, which eventually became part of Nickelodeon, and has since held leadership roles at several crowdfunding companies, including Kickstarter. She's also passionate about diversity and inclusion in gaming, and has been involved in various initiatives to promote a more inclusive gaming environment. And if that wasn't enough, she can play the absolute hell out of the sax.
So, Anya, how the fuck?
How the fuck?
Yes. How the fuck?
So what you do is you take a reed, preferably like a size 3, and then you put it on your mouthpiece. You put a nice ligature on there. You put it on the neck, then you put the neck on the horn, and then you do doodly doots.
Now,
And that's a technical term.
That's a technical term.
you need to hold your saxophone upside down to get the spit out first, if you were just playing it to warm up.
If you have to do that, that means that you have a leak in your horn and you should probably take it into the shop.
That did happen to me in middle school, yeah.
Amazing.
Checks out.
But then we're not here to talk about saxophone, are we?
No.
As much as I want to, but
I think a more general how the fuck is like, how did you get here? What happened?
Well, it actually is through music that I got here, surprisingly. So I was not allowed to play games growing up at all. They were banned in my house, specifically video games. And ironically, so were cartoons.
At all? Like none? Like not even?
Like Disney was it. No Nickelodeon, no like Sunday cartoons, no animation. Very strictly banned in my house.
No Pokemon.
No, I did not know what Pokemon was until I was probably 18 or 19.
Were you homeschooled? And I mean that in
No.
the nicest way possible.
Wow.
Okay, as someone who was homeschooled, I knew what Pokemon was. So
Fair.
So I thought that Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z were the same thing.
Fair.
What a universe that could have been.
You could have told me one was the same and I'd be like, there's a character that talks funny. I don't know what this is. It's fine. Vaguely Japanese. Like, okay.
That's the criteria. Vaguely Japanese.
Vaguely Japanese. I just remember in marching band, the drum line would do like fireballs. Like in the back, like they would do poses that were supposed to be fireballs. And I was like, that's cool. What does this have to do with what we're doing? But okay. Like, cool, guys. So yeah, all of it was banned. But we did like family game nights. So we did, like Candyland and Monopoly and Balderdash and things like that. But nothing outside of what you would just typically buy like in the store. So no D&D, definitely no D&D, no role-playing games. All of that was banned.
Was it religious reasons? Like what was the
Tiger Mom?
Yeah. Yep. So cultural.
Kind of. I mean, I don't know. I say that, but like my mom is an artist, so it's like it's complicated because she's very, very creative. My mom made most of my clothes growing up. For like most of my life. She made my prom dress. She made my sister's wedding dress. She made her own wedding dress. Like she's very creative, incredible painter, was like the #1 French horn player in the state of California for years, phenomenal, accomplished pianist, like very creative, but is also the oldest of 9 of a family that fled fascism and you know, she had 2 daughters and she was like, also my sister I'll explain. My sister was disabled most of my life. So there was a lot of like, I have to be perfect. So there was no room for error for me, the weird artsy kid.
Oh no.
What could
I
go
was-
wrong?
Yeah,
No,
that sounds like
okay,
a
good.
recipe
Yeah.
for a perfect upbringing and no trauma.
No issues at
None at
all.
all.
Yeah. I say was because she was diagnosed with JRA, which stands for juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, in every joint from her neck to her feet. So she had it in every single joint and was quadriplegic for a while.
Holy shit.
We had to like redo our entire house to like accommodate, you know, disability, accessibility, which is now obviously something that like I just like intrinsically look for. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is not nobody can fucking wheelchair in here. That's not okay. Or
Yeah.
like even when we were doing stuff at Kickstarter, I was like, we have to think about routes for people in wheelchairs, because if people are just putting their backpacks everywhere, this is an accessibility issue and it's like not okay. Which was like, you know, I'm appreciative that Kickstarter was very like, yeah, no, 100%. Like we want to be as like inclusive and mindful about this as possible. But I think that also is why I'm very like on my high horse of like, you know, diversity and inclusion in every space. Just I grew up with it. I'm biracial and my sister was in a wheelchair.
Hell yeah.
Like, you know, that's kind of what happens. She's fine now. Like she's been in remission since she was 13. She's had 2 kids.
Wow.
She just can't, and she also like she gained the ability to walk, I guess. It sounds so dramatic. But like she was, you know, she was like, cool, my joints are like less flaring up, and then ran a 7-minute mile.
Wow.
What the fuck?
That's
That's
amazing.
crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've had a weird life.
One extreme to another there.
Yeah. She was like, I'm going all in.
I mean,
Did I make up for lost time?
to be
Yeah.
fair, if that's like the experience that you had for the majority of your childhood, like why wouldn't you kind of slingshot back in the other direction?
She's also one of the reasons that like I get really sensitive when people see folks that are disabled and they do the thing where they're like, oh my gosh, you're so brave. Because my sister at 8 would be like, go fuck yourself. She was like, I'm in a wheelchair. I'm physically disabled, but I'm very smart. Do not talk down to me.
I love that.
So that like, I don't know, it's one of those weird little things where I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Nope, absolutely not. We're not going to treat people like they are lesser than just because of a challenge that they are facing. Simple as
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So anyway, that's all to say. Sorry. Tangent.
No, don't apologize. We're all neurodivergent, ADHD, tangential.
Ugh,
It's totally fine.
that's okay. I'm gonna drink to that. Yay. By that I meant water out of a skull glass. Is
Yes.
what I will be consuming right now. So video games not allowed, games not really allowed, and but I like, you know, despite all of that, I was like, music is a thing that I love. So I went and studied music, and I technically never graduated. There is a photo of me walking across the stage with me in a tassel. I just talked my way across the stage and they just let me take a photo. And I was like, yeah, I promise I'll take that one class. And then I was just like, whatever, I don't care. This doesn't mean anything.
That's amazing.
Hell yeah.
So you don't need to get a degree to be successful. Don't go to college. I'll go to a trade
I'll
school.
drink to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I then was, you know, a couple $100,000 in debt, and what are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
So I got a job I got 2 jobs well, my first job right out of college was traveling around in an RV for 3 months around the country, talking to college students about what happens when you graduate. And I was like, it turns out nothing happens. You're in debt and you're depressed. So stay. Don't ever leave.
I'm doing this now.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you guys want to have a beer and hang out? Because I'm so sad and so lonely.
That's so deeply relatable.
Yeah. Yep. On a lot of purpose.
So, but I got to like see the country, and like that did sort of allow me, like I got paid to just sort of like figure out what it is I wanted to do. And like music school, I went to classical music school. I went to a classical conservatory and like studied it really, really aggressively. And I was just like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. Like, I want to play music, but there's no, I would have to go to grad school to study classical saxophone. And then I would have to go to the Paris University to like study, get a doctorate and like what, saxophonist, like
I'm a doctor of the saxophone.
yeah, which is what that was the track. That would have been the track. Or I could have worked in the music industry, which is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do artist and repertoire for like bands and musicians and creatives and see how I could like help them achieve their dreams. That was the goal. That was what I wanted to do. So then I worked in music for like a year and a half at 2 different companies. They were horrible. The economy collapsed. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I was like, wow, it's really hard being a woman in the music industry.
Well, you go try games?
And then I got into games and was like, oh no, what have I done?
What industry might be just as bad, if not potentially worse? Yeah, we try that one.
Yeah, I was like,
Oof.
I will dive in head in first. Yeah, I was like glutton, just pure like glutton for punishment over here. So I applied for this job at that time. It was called MTV Networks because Viacom, which is the overarching like parent company of everything. My God, the like corporate structure stuff, it just like my brain hurts thinking about it because it's so nonsensical and
Yep.
doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yes.
matter. Just as like quite frankly, your job title doesn't matter. So we're all just trying to pay our bills at the end of the day. Like
Yep.
that's what it comes down to. But I got this job at MTV Networks under the Addicting Games vertical, effectively, which was technically under Nickelodeon, but Nickelodeon was also under MTV Networks before Nickelodeon went off, and they just did all the brands as like individual brands. Yeah.
I
Ow.
need like a board with like string.
Yeah, I was gonna say I need one of those like murder boards to connect everything.
It's a real like Peppa Sylvia sort of situation from It's Always Sunny, where you're like, it's just Viacom. You're just saying Viacom.
That's all it is.
That's all this is. Yeah. So they had said because I saw it online because I'm 100 years old and still, I think I even like faxed my resume at the point because it was so long ago, which is so fun for me to relive in my life. It said artist and repertoire for Flash games. And I was like, I don't know what a Flash game is, but A&R is cool. And it's at MTV Network. So maybe I could get this job and then I could shoehorn my way into the music side of things.
Which is totally what happened, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm here to talk about how I saved MTV and now we show music videos. Oh, wait.
R.I.P.
You had me there in the first half.
It's true. I lost you in the second half, though. So I got the job there, and I like within my first month there, I was like, "Oh, got it." So Flash games are those little games that you play online. I play those games; those are fun. I see why those are exciting. But they wanted somebody who didn't have a gaming background because they wanted somebody to look at the games from the perspective of someone who would be like 8 years old looking at games for the first time.
Cool.
And they thought you were perfect for that.
And they were like, this 25-year-old hipster piece of shit is absolutely perfect. And I was like, I'm in. But I realized that like all these game developers, I was like, oh, they're just artists. But they're not being treated like artists. But like, this is art. They're making art. They're making something to invoke an emotion out of a human that they otherwise wouldn't feel. And that can be anything. That could be frustration. That could be anger. That can be happy. That could be sad, like whatever it is. But like, they're making art because it's creating an emotion. Cool. Awesome. And so that mindset of all I do is work with artists, and I want to make sure that I can represent those artists as best as I can to make sure that their artistic career is like, that's the driving force behind anything else, is treating game developers as artists. And I hopefully almost 16 years in, have never like strayed from that perspective.
I love that.
So that's how the fuck.
That's and the
That
podcast
is-
is over. Thank you so much for
that
joining
is
us.
like-
Oh,
yeah.
really?
All right.
That's the most comprehensive the fuck we've ever been given. I love it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. No, it's great.
No,
Oh,
that's
a great
fantastic.
thing. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful thing.
All right. So I guess next question is, you have worked with these companies, Addicting Games, Nickelodeon, even Kickstarter to a degree, which are well known in the spaces that they're in, specifically in gaming and entertainment. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences and at each one of those and what you learned there that you then took into the next part of your career?
Yeah. I mean, Addicting Games specifically was just that quick realization of like, oh, I work with artists, done. This is how I'm going to like act for my career for as long as that is. At Nickelodeon, I learned what I don't want, which is sometimes just as valuable as like what you do want, right? And I was like, I cannot work somewhere where the marketing department is 4 floors and 5 people do the same thing. And the only way anybody actually like gets anything done here is if they can make a good deck. That's it. That's all that matters. And I was like, so no work actually gets done. There's nothing but bureaucracy. There's just redlining. Like, this is awful. I don't want to work in this type of environment. I want to be able to come into work and like actually do something and not just have like, I have to figure out who it is I need to please to get the thing done. And like, to a certain degree, that just kind of is a job no matter where, right? Even as a musician, I'm like, I have to play the game a little bit, but I don't want it to be that the game is the entire game. Like that's not exciting. With Kickstarter is the job that really like shot me up into where I am, I guess. A lot of that was like we might want to cut this out because I'm just going to say he can be a little bit controversial. But the boss that I had at Kickstarter was the best mentor I think I've had in the game space. He really, I didn't agree with everything he did. We would get into some like drag down fights with each other where we would just like, they were never like toxic or hurtful or anything like that. But we would definitely go sort of like toe to toe on a lot of stuff. But he really taught me how to ask questions that are necessary, which I thought was such a great thing. So specifically when you're talking to creators, if you know what the direction of the thing is that they want to do. So in crowdfunding, it's like I know for the most part like what it is that your project needs to do, like how it needs to happen. I learned at Kickstarter really how to ask questions of creators to help drive conversations, which that sounds so manipulative, but what I mean by that is like I know what the answer is. I know what the like correct answer is, but the correct answer isn't necessarily the best answer or the right answer. So like asking questions so I can understand the perspective of somebody else was like one of the most, it seems so obvious, but it was like one of the best teaching experiences I think I ever like was taught, that's just active listening. It's being able to say, can I repeat this back to you? Or what I'm hearing is, or have you thought about this? What about this? Like stuff like that. So that was really cool. Obviously, like learning everything about crowdfunding, being being there during the just like the tail end of the video game boom, and then the tabletop space just like exploding into what it is now. Like that was huge. I didn't know anything about tabletop. I knew nothing about tabletop before being in the Kickstarter space. I'd never even played D&D before I got a job at Kickstarter. And so I just got this rush of information sort of thrown at me. I learned how to do public speaking there. I learned how to moderate panels. I also gained like a lot of confidence in that job, sort of having to, right? Like they sort of like pushed me out in front and they were like, you're the face now, good luck. And I was like, what's happening? Wait, I don't know what's going on. And so I like learned like you falling on your face is not a bad thing. It's how you deal with falling on your face more than anything else. And like I blundered left and right and I was just like, as long as I surround myself with people that are gonna like help me, then I'm fine.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Also cool that they allowed you to sort of make those blunders and learn from them, and then continue to like grow in the role. That's
a lot of that was who my manager was. And he also was like, I want you to mess up. I want you to make mistakes. It's the only way you're going to learn. If you're just perfect all the time, like, what are you learning? What is the point of this?
that's a
That's
phenomenal
a good
approach.
manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. He texted me the other day. So
Nice.
There you go. Still in touch.
yeah, he's a good friend. He likes to come to my shows. He also is like, he's so funny. He like, we were talking about this because we ended up on the same flight home from Gen Con, and we were just reminiscing about the good old days of Kickstarter, which is like wild to think about. But he pushed me to do my first talk in Germany at Games Week Berlin because they really wanted him to do this like solo talk about crowdfunding at a event called Womenize, which is not great. But
No.
part of it's a little bit of a language barrier. And like, I've had conversations with that team where I was like, I understand in German, this probably doesn't mean the same thing, but I'm just letting you know, this is the perception. And Luke was like, I can't do that because I'm a straight white man. Anya is the one that's going to be doing this talk. And they like did not want that. They were like, no, we want you. You're the head of games. And he was like, no, she's going to do the talk. I understand she's never done this before, but we will prep her and we will do everything that is necessary. We will walk her through the process. Terrified the whole time. He's standing in the front like a dad, taking like crouching down, taking photos, just like, you got this, kid. And I was like, I'm going to fucking kill you.
Front row, your recital.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
funny.
Yeah. And I was like, I've lived through this my entire life. I started dancing when I was 2, and then I went from dancing to karate, and then went from karate to saxophone. This has been my entire life. And now I'm like reliving my childhood.
Just mouthing the
Absolute
words
nonsense.
along with you, just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you nailed that line.
Yeah. And I was like, you are Amy Poehler in Mean Girls right
Yes.
now. I cannot handle this. This is so embarrassing. And he would like
Cool
stand in the
bosses.
back. Yeah. Yeah. He's like standing in the back, like flash on, just like, whoa, you got this. I was like, you need to stop. You need to stop doing this. So it became this thing with us where like when one of us would do a talk, so he did a solo talk, and I just like, I crawled over people and I was like, I know him. It's fine. I know him. And was like just like absolutely trying to mortify him and like throw him off his game. I will say though, that experience of having somebody, because the way that we would do stuff at Kickstarter is we would do our talks and people would intentionally be awful in the audience because it was with your like your teammates. So they would like talk, they would chew gum, they would do everything that is distracting just to sort of be like, this is the reality of doing a public talk. Also, here are the awful questions that you're going to get. How do you handle it? So I was like, I'm prepped, like I'm good.
That's a great practice. Like anything that we can throw at you is probably worse than anything you're going to receive, by and large out in the real world.
Yeah.
Also, I love that you sort of like touched on your manager being like, actually, this is not my place to come and do this talk, because it segues really nicely into the next question, which is that diversity and inclusion is really like a huge topic in gaming and is of immense importance. And want to get a little bit of your sense and your insights on the issue and the work that maybe you have done or that you see as really valuable and people are doing, like within the industry to address the distinct lack of diversity and inclusion.
So I have some slightly controversial thoughts on this.
Ooh, baby, give them to us.
I would just preface by saying, like, I have the general everybody thoughts of like, we need more diversity, we need different faces, and we need different voices and things like that. I also think that we are getting to a point in the games industry where everyone suddenly is a victim. And I think that we need to be very careful about how we talk about these things, because I've also watched a lot of words and terms be weaponized against marginalized people by folks who are not marginalized. It is a really, really dangerous, it's a really dangerous line to be walking. It scares me in a lot of different ways too, where I'm just like, you are using the words that represent a vulnerable community against that vulnerable community that is already scared. So how does that community stand up for itself when they're already just sort of like constantly being beaten down? That is, I'm finding myself more in that focus, right? Like I also like I did a panel in Croatia called "What the Fuck It's 2023, How is this still happening?" And it was a response to the roofing situation that happened at GDC. It was a response to just stories that were coming out of GDC of things that were happening that were not okay. And I found myself getting really frustrated because I was like, why are we pretending that this is the first time this has happened? What, like, this happens every year, right? Every year somebody gets followed to their hotel. That every year somebody gets roofied at GDC. You know this, right? And it was this moment of people just being like, "Wait, really?" And I was like, "How do you not know this? Like how is this new information to you?" And I find myself in this really complicated situation where I'm like, I don't know if having a panel of marginalized folks, and typically it is women that are on these panels that are talking about these things. I don't know if us just like trauma dumping about the things that have happened to us is the right response.
Mm.
I think that can be really complicated. And I think you need to kind of go through a certain level of like safety mechanisms in order to do that, especially in a public space. Um, that that's something I've been putting a lot of thought into. And I also think it does tend to label the people on the panel as victims when maybe that's not how they identify. So that can be like really complicated. And I'm in a place now where I'm much more interested in identifying the problem. Great. Okay. What is it that we do? Because we all know what to do with the big stuff, right? You report it. That's what you're supposed to do. You report it. I'm more interested in how we got to the big stuff. What is the stuff that made this okay to get to the big stuff, right? So, like, why is it that every single Gen Con at a table, women are being harassed at a table through microaggressions where people are making comments about their bodies? They're making comments about their occupations. They're making comments about, oh, do you know how to play this game? Are you sure you know? Do you know which dice that is? Oh, let me help you with that, right? So, like, those small little things are what builds to the larger stuff. And so I'm sort of in a place now where I'm like, how do we stop this so it doesn't get to the bigger stuff? That is much more the focus that I have right now in the I guess that's not really diversity, but
But it's inclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that personally, I think that there's a shift that needs to happen in the games industry in general, especially with sponsorships. And I think that anytime any company has the financial capability to be able to sponsor an event of any kind, they should require a certain amount of that money goes towards bringing in a creator who would otherwise not be able to attend.
Hell yeah.
Hard stop. Like, that's what every company line should be. I also think that if we're going to have these conversations in a public space, every single person that's going to be talking about this should be compensated. And I think that these companies need to just start ponying money up and paying people for their emotional labor. Like, I don't really want to do another, I mean, I will, but like, I don't want to have to do another like sexual harassment in the games industry discussion. Like, why are we still talking about this? I also like, I'm also not a huge fan of women in games panels. I think they're actually really exclusionary. And I think that they only represent a certain voice in the games community where we're suddenly like, do non-binary femme presenting people not exist? Do trans women not exist? Like, women in games has a very specific connotation.
And
that
you
I
mean
think
women
makes up
in
a larger-
games as like a thing, not like
Yeah.
women in gaming panels, right? Like women in games.
Yeah, women in games is a blanket sort of term, right?
Yeah.
But even I've watched a lot of women in games panels, and I was like, it's a lot of white ladies up there. Whole lot of white ladies.
Yeah.
Is that really representative of our community? Because I don't think it is. So that's a thing that I like clock, right? Or even like when I'm on a panel, I'm like, am I the only woman? I don't do it. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. I'm not your token diversity. Because I'll yell at all of you, so I don't think you want me there. So yeah. And I also think like one of the things that I really pushed for at Kickstarter when I was hosting a lot of events is I would push for diversity constantly. So like anytime we had creators in our space, I was like, okay, I would look at the list and I'd be like, these are all white dudes. He's gone, he's gone, he's gone. They already have a space. It doesn't matter. We need to bring these people in. We need to pair these people together. Like we need to create spaces. Anybody that's in a position of power, and like I don't really know if I'm in a position of power, but I do know a lot of people. So anytime I'm able to be like, this person should talk to this person, how do we make this connection happen because it's good? I think that anybody who has that like Rolodex, we should just constantly be thinking about that. Like we should just constantly be thinking about how we can connect people together because we want everybody to succeed in this industry. So fucking do it.
Well, I was going to say, I just want to just highlight a quick, just like a monetary thing. When you're talking about people being compensated for their time, like we're talking like what, hundreds or maybe a couple $1,000s at most for, you know, like potentially like bigger showings.
Yeah, I think my baseline is always $100.
Okay.
$100.
Cool.
Which for an organization or a company is literally nothing.
Well, what I was going to say is 2022, the gaming industry was $347 billion worldwide. So like the ask that you're making is
a grain
like,
of sand.
Like
it's nothing.
Yeah, literally nothing.
I think any company that has a women's initiative at their core values needs to be paying women when their staff is on these panels. You should be paying them extra.
Something that always drove me absolutely crazy in tech as well, where there was like this expected additional labor for not additional compensation.
Yep.
Of like, yeah, show up after work and like let's talk and let's like do all these things and like figure out how to make the things better. And it's like, I'm not going to show up if I'm not going to get compensated because I actually care about having like a work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just asking more from me.
Also, you'd probably be willing to pay a guy to come do that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, what you're also touching on is labor rights.
Yeah.
Which is a huge thing in games.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have those in the US.
It's fine. Not in this country.
Right?
Kickstarter has a union.
Hell yeah.
Oh boy. That is a conversation off air.
Oh, I want to talk about it though. Just later.
When we go to Six Flags, I'll give you all the info.
In line, waiting for the roller coasters.
We'll sidebar this conversation for right now.
Yes.
So speaking of this gaming industry we were just talking about here, it is constantly evolving. And thinking about that, and with your perspective of coming into the game kind of late, you could say, you kind of entered at a time where things really started picking up at a very rapid pace, from Flash games to now it's like, you know, full servers on cloud-based systems and stuff like that. So what trends and changes do you see on the horizon for esports and gaming in the near future?
Esports, I'll be totally honest, I don't know if I'd be the best person to answer esports questions. It's a world that I'm a little bit scared of.
That's fair. It's
That's fair. I respect that answer.
Yeah. It's
I'm scared of it.
I guess it's one of those things where it's like it bypassed me as a person, and since it bypassed me, I was like, I think I'm not really into this. I love that it exists. I think it's super important. I've also just like, I've heard that the players don't get treated very well. And so that makes me nervous to consume content knowing that these players are maybe like potentially being drugged, potentially, you know, I ethically question if that is the right thing to do. And maybe that's like a little bit too like on my high horse and like too woke to view stuff, but it's like, I don't know. I feel conflicted about that.
I could sidebar that later as well. I have stories about that myself.
Yeah.
But in terms of gaming in the near future,
gaming and tabletop, even. I know
and
that's
tabletop,
a space that you know really well.
Yeah.
I would say it has been wild watching the industry change over 16 years. Even just like the ability for people to change their graphic capability in a video game it's been so crazy. It also, like, I think people forget that, like, the digital world of gaming, specifically like video games, it's not that old. It's a very young industry. And the fact that the video game industry is larger than all of film worldwide is such a, like, wild stat to think about. I would say the biggest thing that I've seen is the concept of what a gamer is has gone from, like, a very specific, like, nerd in the basement to, like, everybody plays games. Everybody plays games, right? And so I remember being in high school and being, like, watching my high school boyfriend play Magic, and I was like, "Oh, I wanna play," and he was like, "No, girls don't play this." And I was like, "That's cool. Okay, I won't do that then, I guess." And, like, wanting to be part of these role-playing worlds because I was like, "Oh, that sounds fun. I wanna do that." And the boys were like, "No, no, no, no. This is for boys." And now we have so many, like, every identity under the sun has the ability to have an actual play now, which is super cool. Like, the ability to bring community together in a digital space for people to, like, explore and be creative together is awesome. Like, that's really cool. And that really just comes down to changing the narrative behind the word gamer, where it, like, it doesn't have a negative connotation to it anymore. It's just like, okay,
Mm.
whatever, cool, who cares? For tabletop, I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is the tabletop industry is much older than the video games industry, right? Like, the tabletop industry, I mean, Boncala exists. Like, you can look back in history and see, like, in, you know, Stone Age times, people were playing games, right? You got to do something to pass the time.
The oldest, this is a random fact, but the oldest ever found like toy is dice,
Yeah,
which
Yeah.
is so, like, of course it is.
yeah, it's super cool. But I love the idea of tabletop becoming a new explored space, in the sense of I love the translation of video game to tabletop game and tabletop game to video game. Like, that's really fascinating to me. I love that the tabletop space is becoming so prolific with mental health. So, like,
Mm.
Take This is a great example of that, of people who use D&D and apply therapeutic tactics.
Yeah.
I did a panel at West with the Secretary of State of the state of Washington, and he is a nerd. And I did not know it, in the state of Washington, D&D was banned in all of the jails.
Oh my,
What?
that's
In
such
all,
a
really, in all
specific
jails?
thing.
No,
Yeah.
but that's like D&D in prison is like a very big and serious thing. Like, I've read
So
articles
is art in
on, like,
prison.
Yep.
creating people, the way they create dice from
Yeah.
just spitted up pieces of paper
Yep.
to the way that they create character sheets, and
Mhm.
like how worn all of the books are in, like, the prison libraries
Yeah.
because they are constantly being read.
Yeah.
It's such a transitive medium
Mhm.
to, like you're talking about, like, use, like, as like a form of therapy to,
Yeah.
like, just disassociate from what is literally keeping them in a prison
Yep.
that might and probably is not their fault,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, just with how the prison system in this country
Well,
And
is.
it goes back to what Anya was saying about, like, games being art, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could talk for like several hours about the importance of art and, like, the impact that it has on incarcerated people.
Mhm.
And, like, this is very tangential and very much about me, so I don't want to talk about it for too long, but, like, I worked with a dance company in high school that went into prisons and, like, taught dance and, like, performed with prisoners. And it was, like, very, very interesting to see the way in which that shifted these people when they got out of prison, and, like,
Mhm.
changed the things that were important to them and changed their priorities. And, like, I can completely understand why tabletop games and Dungeons and Dragons would have a very similar impact.
Yeah.
But not to completely take away from what you were saying about the Secretary of
No.
State of Washington and
Yeah,
your
no,
panel.
No, no, no.
it's like a crazy fact though that it got banned. That's
Yeah.
that's insane to me.
Well, one of the reasons it got banned, and it makes sense, is they didn't want inmates gambling. And so if you're rolling dice, they were like, "Oh, if you have access to dice, then you might be gambling." So they wanted to avoid gambling as a, you know, which, like, I understand that, but I'm also like, well, they're gonna figure out how to gamble anyway. It's fine. It's not
Yeah.
like there's other ways to do that. So
Congratulations on banning one of a gajillion
million.
different ways that people could play.
Yeah.
yeah, like whatever. But they were like contrabanding D&D. The librarian that the Secretary of State was working with was like, oh no, we have secret D&D, and they had like figured out how to do these like secret character sheets and like secret cards as a way to like roll dice, so that way they weren't being
This
caught.
has to be a documentary.
This is
Yeah,
so
isn't
cool.
that
Someone
incredible?
has to
Yeah.
make this
There-
into a movie.
There might be something on Vice about it, honestly, but
Sounds right. Yeah.
it sounds right, and I feel like I might have watched it, but like the creativity that is formed out of in prison with art in general is
I mean,
just
women's prison and what they can do in terms of like finding ways to do makeup with limited resources is incredible. Like
Yeah.
I fully believe in reintegrating people into
Same.
society. And quite frankly, even if you did do something that was so awful and so egregious, if you did the time and you're able to change who you are as a person, why do you deserve to constantly be punished? Like
Rehabilitation instead of punishment is
Yeah.
absolutely the right way to handle things.
Yeah. But that's all to say that like so anyway, the Secretary of State got D&D reinstated into the prison system in Washington, which is awesome. And he's trying to change like the policy just kind of around the country as it is. He also had a D&D game where he was the DM with as many different perspectives in politics as he could put together at a table. So he had a Republican and like a nonpartisan person and a Democrat. And he was like, it was really interesting to watch people play because they disagree on everything politically, but they can agree on what to do in a game. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. He did, however, say he accidentally assigned the Republican as a paladin.
Oops.
And I was like, that's great. I love that, actually. But that's all to say that, like, you know, we're getting another surge of satanic panic, and that's always going to happen. This is, you know, people get bored and they want to find something to blame for their kids being weird, which, like, just let your kid be weird. Who cares?
Hell yeah.
Like, it's fine.
It'll be
Sometimes
more interesting for it.
yeah, sometimes they're a tattooed and pierced up musician. It's fine. It's not a
Hold
big deal.
on. Wait a second.
Wait.
Hold. I feel like
But I think tabletop games, the resurgence of tabletop games, which like I kind of fight back against that narrative a little bit, where I was just like, it's always been there, you just weren't looking for it. I don't know if it's a resurgence, right? But I think tabletop games being able to help shape a lot of future video games, and I'm not just talking about like Baldur's Gate, because I don't think that really counts necessarily. Same with DOS, Divinity Original Sin. Like those guys are nerds. They play a ton of D&D. It's not like they were just like, we want to make a game based on this thing. Like they sit around and play D&D all the time. Like it's obvious. But being able to translate things like Binding of Isaac, which was a, you know, incredibly popular indie game, and that was translated into this like super fun party game that Ed and his team did. I've had a couple conversations about this, but like I think that Tunic could make a good board game. It's just the mechanics of it would have to be like retooled a little bit, but that game just to me screams dungeon crawler opportunity. With cute little minis like that. Just I don't know, there's something about it where I'm like something like sticks to me. And then on top of that, I think also I love the experimental games that would happen at GDC and this great conference I haven't gone to in years, which I miss so much, called Amaze out in Germany. Tons of super cool, interesting experimental games. There was this game I saw a couple years ago. Cannot remember the name of it to save my life, but it was a first-person shooter, and it was from the perspective of you being the sniper. And as the bullet is like going towards your target, you learn about the life of the person that you're shooting before it actually shoots them.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah. And like sometimes it was like, yeah, this is a horrible like terrorist. Yeah, absolutely, you should have, you know, I mean, I don't know, guns are gross, but like yeah, maybe them not living was the right call, but also like, oh, this was a hit on someone that was like a father, and now he will never see his kids again, right? And so it's like this beautiful social commentary on like guns and just sort of like how they can so instantaneously just like ruin someone, like destroy somebody's life, to end somebody's life. Oh, I love stuff like that. Line Rider is another great weird experimental game. I love the uh like how tabletop and video games can kind of like combine different elements together and see what that's going to look like. Not VR, not AR. I'm not as interested in that personally. Mostly cuz
Super
VR makes me
fair.
sick. Yeah, but like there's so much creativity that we haven't even explored yet of of what the future of games is going to look like, which is so exciting to me.
That's awesome. I kind of switch gears with a two-part question that we've definitely talked a lot about already. But this is a little bit more of a personal question in that, like,
Mhm.
I'd like to hear about your experience as a woman of a multiracial woman in the gaming space, and sort of like some of the challenges that you have faced, the lessons that you've learned. I'm sure this could be a very long answer, so feel free to run with this as much as you want to. But the second piece of the question is for any woman who is potentially interested in a career in gaming or tabletop, do you have any advice that you would give to them to get them started?
Yes, I would say that my experience as a woman and a biracial woman and a woman who's 40, that's another thing. I would say that my experience probably mirrors that of my peers in that we have all had to deal with various levels of harassment. We've all had to deal with various levels of fighting for what our worth is. I entered the gaming industry when I was 25. I didn't know anything. I was just dumb little kid. I was a kid, like I was a child. I had like I was barely paying my rent. I just needed to make money. I was trying to like build social relationships with people, and I didn't really know what I was getting into, so I was very naive about what this space was. I never thought this would be my career. I thought this was just like a one-off thing and I'll go back into music and figure shit out, right? Um, and my first GDC party, so I got that job in 2008, and then my first GDC party was 2009. And that was the first party that I was ever sexually harassed at by a random dude. And my male boss at the time just kind of smiled and laughed and just went, "What do you expect?" And I was like, "Oh." And that set the precedent for me of this is how I'm going to be seen and treated. And it was this really challenging thing because, like, I was 25, I was, like, kind of exploring my own personal identity of who I was and, like, do I wanna dress more femme? Do I wanna dress more grungy? Like, who is it that I am? And I was like, "I guess I'm never gonna be seen as serious, so why try?
Mm.
Why don't I just flip it on its head and just do the thing that I'm comfortable with?" Because even if I were to wear a suit every day, because of my anatomy, there's just things that people are going to assume about me. So what if I did enhance those things, but I was loudmouthed and I was confident? What if I was able to like explore who I am in a space and own every single identity and thing about myself that I love and just put a middle finger to these guys and be like, everything that you say means nothing to me because first of all, whatever you say to me that's mean, I've said something about myself to myself that is 1,000 times worse. There's nothing that you can say to me that's mean that is going to hurt me. It's just not gonna hurt me. I might get my feelings hurt, and that's valid, but it's not gonna actually hurt me. It's not gonna do damage that's gonna be irreparable, right? Like, the shit
Mm.
that I say to myself is always gonna be so much worse. Um, and it took me a really long time to, like, build that, and a lot of that was trial and error, and I made a lot of blunders, and I messed up a lot. Um, and a lot of the experiences that I've had in the games industry have been incredibly scary, because 'cause they've been by myself at conferences, and I maybe trusted the wrong people, maybe got myself into situations where I, like, "shouldn't have been there," although
I
quite
mean, that's
frankly.
very victim blamey of yourself.
Yeah,
Like, those situations shouldn't exist.
correct. And I'm very lucky in the sense that like I have a number of friends who have had unbelievably horrifying things happen to them in this industry. I've had female friends of mine that have left just because they're like, I can't deal with this. And I'm very lucky where like I'll say this because I'll explain. I present as very tall, but I'm not.
You know what's so funny is you don't even need to explain that because I have had the same thing said about me, and I completely understand. Like,
Yeah.
it's an energy thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a lot of people be like, "You're like what, 5'9", 5'10", and I'm like, I'm maybe 5'4".
Yeah.
Like maybe. And I've spent a lot of time over the last like probably 5 or 6 years cultivating a certain look where like I wear all black, I a bunch of tattoos, I have a bunch of piercings. I usually have like a shit ton of rings on. I've got big earrings, I've got big Baphomet earrings, I got a bunch of skulls. I look very like gothy, punk, kind of scary. I either have black or red nails at all times. I don't have a scowl. I would not say that I'm like a scowly person, but people are always like surprised when I smile and I'm like, I'm not like unhappy, like whatever. But that is a very intentional look that I have, so that way people know that, like, that it is a shield that I have built, so that way people don't break through. And, oh my god, when people break through, I'm like, ugh, I hate that. That's a scary thing to think about. And that's what works for me. I know some people that are like, they're full, like, ooh-woo, that is their thing, but that is the thing that makes them feel comfortable, and that is the thing that gives them the confidence so that they have the same energy. It's just in a different, like, aesthetic. So whatever works for you, find it and experiment, and don't be scared to experiment. I will say this about this industry. This industry allows you to experiment. Like, that is fine, and that is with everything. That is your sexual identity, that is your sexual preference, that is your, you know, your whatever anime you're into, whatever it is that you want, that you are like, whatever your thing is, whatever your game is, there's going to be people that are going to support you no matter what, right? And that, whether that's fans or companies or anything like that, you need to find them. So if I were to give advice to women who want to get into the games industry, so one, I am now at a point in my career where I feel a sense of responsibility for younger women coming into the games industry. So when I'm at an event, I don't even realize I'm doing this, but I have clocked as soon as I walk into a room who the youngest girl is, and I have my eye on her every single time because there's a 0% chance that some dude is going to do something inappropriate. It's not going to happen. He will be dragged out of there by me if I need to. Like, I've stopped assaults from happening. I'm not scared. I don't care. I had to do it in Seattle at PAX West. I watched this guy following this girl down the street, and I immediately intervened and was just like, I did the classic thing where I was like, "Hi, it's so good to see you." And he got in my face, and I was just like, "You wanna fuck with me? Are you sure? You really? You're crazy, man." So, like, I've also surrounded myself with fellow women who have the same perspective. So finding your, like, safe zone. I've stopped using the word tribe because it's not okay.
It's not. I was gonna say, I was like, I can tell that that is like the feeling
Yes.
you are going for, and I really appreciate you not using that word.
Yeah. I've found my community of fellow-minded people who will look out for other people while also looking out for each other. So find who those people are. There's, like, little things that I also will, like, very intentionally do. So I try to avoid most parties. Um, it's unfortunate, but I don't feel safe, and I get really full of anxiety because 'cause I'm like, something's gonna happen, and I don't wanna see it, and I don't wanna have to be the one to break it up because I don't think anymore. I just see it happening, and I'm like, "Phew," I'm like in, just like, "No, absolutely not." Like, it doesn't click that there are repercussions to your actions. And like, you know, if I'm my name is tied to a company, so if I do something and I go somewhere and I like punch a dude because he's being inappropriate, it's going to be Anya from this company did that. Now me as a like potentially going fully freelance, oh, it's on. Like, I only have to represent myself, so those are the things that I have to like think about now. But I take young women coming into the industry like very, very seriously. And when I did that panel at in Croatia, that was the thing that we talked about, where all of us on that panel were seasoned. We've been here a long time. We were like, come talk to us. We got you. Like, you're under our wing, no problem. That also means feeling safe disclosing when something happens to you, but understanding that a lot of times it can only go as far as all I can do is listen. I don't necessarily have the tools or the pedigree to be able to like excommunicate somebody from the industry, but I can let the whisper networks know.
Love a whisper network.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a very
No.
intense answer.
No. That's
Don't
exactly the
apologize.
kind of answer that I was looking for with that question, because I know that you have such a really unique and also not unique perspective. Unique in that you are part of a small subset of people who have been in this industry for long enough to have seen so much, but not unique in that anyone else who is in that same boat as you has seen the exact same fucking thing.
Yeah. And this is not unique to games.
Yes.
This happens everywhere. Oh my God. I played a gig last week in Boston, literally across from the Boston Convention Center, and I was like, I'm at PAX, but like not really.
Yeah.
But so we had to get there. We got there the night before, and it was this was the gig I was telling you about, where I was like, they won't tell us who the client is. And I was like, oh my God, if it's the NRA, I have to do it.
I'm gonna just die.
I can't do it. I'm so scared. And it was Twisted Tea, the booze company.
Yeah. So totally not problematic and fine. Well, I don't know.
No, they were fine. They were okay. They were,
Um,
as people, they were lovely. But it was this thing where I was like, I was watching so much happen, and I was like, I forgot that like as much shit happens in the games industry, we actually have decent systems in place to be able to prevent. Like, here's the harsh truth: we're never going to completely eliminate sexual harassment. We're not going to eliminate sexual harassment. We're not going to eliminate assault. I would love to get to a place where we can do that. But there's also a little bit of a reality that like we have to continue to educate and condition. And we're not in a place where we can just like eliminate it entirely. So it is going to happen. So how do we take the proper steps to manage it when it does happen, right? And that is a thing that I've seen in the game industry, where people are taking the steps to manage it so ideally it doesn't happen, but more importantly, when it does happen, how do we manage it in a way that is with grace and compassion and kindness, which are like the three tenets with any sort of victim situation that you need more than anything else, right? That did not happen at the beer festival that
Anywhere that there is alcohol is just a fucking problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a thing in the industry that I feel really complicated about it, because like I like to drink wine. I like to drink, and but like I can handle my alcohol knowing this is a professional environment.
I think it's something that is very interesting because it is not unique to the games industry, but coming from like B2B SaaS tech.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that the gaming and the tabletop industry are so intrinsically tied with passion and hobbies and like things that you would do outside of your work, I think that there is more comfort in workspaces in the gaming industry than there is in other industries, which is not to say that sexual harassment does not happen in tech, because it fucking does.
Of course.
But if there's a tech conference, sometimes people will go out and party and like get drunk, but like people don't really want to hang out with their coworkers in the way that people will hang out with their coworkers in the gaming industry, because it's like, yeah, outside of work, we like the same shit. So like, let's go do karaoke, or like, let's go do this thing, which, you know, it's not that it doesn't happen in other industries. It does. But I feel like it's such a focal point of like networking in the gaming industry is like, let's go get a drink. Like, let's go to this like event. Let's go whatever. And lines get blurred really quickly because of that intersection of hobby and work.
Yeah. I think one of the things that needs to change, especially in tabletop, because when we're talking about tabletop and video games in terms of the networking, they're actually two very different worlds. It is dark in the video game side of things and the networking side of things. Like, my God, I remember when GDC, I I suspect I know who approved this, and it's someone that I have personally will not allow in my life. There's actually very few people in the games industry that I am a hard no on. Very, very, like, I can maybe count on one hand. Just because if I'm going to believe in rehabilitation from an inmate's perspective, I have to believe in rehabilitation in my own industry. Like,
Yep.
I have to. And I don't think one bad experience is the summation of a human. I think that's a really dangerous precedent to be setting. Obviously, if you continue to engage in that behavior, then like it's a no. But there are there are people that are not necessarily on that like hand of five, that are maybe on like another hand of just like, I just don't really want to be around you, but I can be in a room with you, and that's okay, right? There's very few people that I am like hard, absolutely not. Do not come near me. If you're at a party, I will get you banned. Very, very few. Um, that's my own line. Everybody has their own boundary, and I respect that. That's totally okay. I lost my point. It'll come to me.
Take your time.
I think you
Oh,
were somewhere in between gaming and tabletop
yeah.
and the
So
networks.
yeah, so the video game side of things, the drinking is much more pervasive, right? So I think about things like TwitchCon, but that is so much more of a like fan event, and fan events versus industry events are so different. That's why PAX is such a fascinating thing to me, because it's like a cross-pollination of the two worlds, right? TwitchCon, BlizzCon, Comic-Con, even to a certain degree, they're fan events. Gen Con is a fan event. There's a lot of business that happens there, but it's ultimately it's a fan event. So you're going to have more issues there because people don't necessarily know how to act in those environments. They should, but they don't, right? So when it comes to like a fan event sort of thing, I I don't know what the right answer is there, because I want people to have fun. I want people to feel like I've saved up for these 3 days for me to be able to party with my friends, with maybe my like guild that I've never met before, and I get to meet them in person. I think that is awesome. I do think that stuff needs to happen off site, and that needs to be happened with friend groups. And when you Twitch parties are notorious for just being an absolute shit show. Oh, I remember it was a GDC party. Oh God, he's on the fist of five. There was an IGDA party, which stands for Independent Game Developers Association, and they were having an event near the conference center, the Moscone Center in San Francisco, and it was in partnership with Microsoft. And for some reason, so there's also a strip club called, I think it's called like Gold something, the Gold Club. And every GDC, they're very smart, the strip club, I have to say. They're very smart. They hand out flyers because it's right next to the conference center, and they're like, get your game on. And they give you like discounts to come to the strip club. And I was like, honestly, I have no issue with that. Like, sex work is work. Hell yeah.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
good for you. That's fantastic.
Mhm.
This event, however, which was an IGDA sponsored event, which was also in partnership with Women in Games and Microsoft, hired the strippers to come and entertain at the party. And
What?
they're
Oh my God, no.
yeah, and the entire board resigned that night.
Wow.
It was a colossal disaster. I think this was like GDC 2013, something like that. Like, you can look it up. Like, there's articles about it because it was so egregious. So like things like that I haven't seen happen in a while. I know that there's like Gamescom parties where some Dutch company at a Gamescom party, I don't know what they were thinking. They hired please correct me on this correct term. They hired little people.
I think that's.
I think you're right. I'm
I'll do a quick
not
Google
an
search.
expert.
I believe that's correct. I
Yeah.
will check.
They hired a group of performers that were little people, and dressed them up in like gold outfits, and basically just paraded them around with a live tiger.
Oh my God.
What the? What is this, like the Middle Ages? Come on!
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wow, that's
And
horrifying.
yeah. So like stuff
Ugh.
like that doesn't happen anymore, right? Like, I'm so thankful that we're past that era. That does not happen. Great. Shouldn't have happened in the first place, but we're past that, right? So like, awesome. Cool. Great. Yay. I do believe that there is a world that exists where people can handle their alcohol and not be unbelievably inappropriate with each other. I do believe that exists. I would say one of the trends that I've seen is, so when I was doing this event in Croatia, Pavel, who's one of the organizers, he doesn't like parties and he doesn't drink. A man from Slovenia who doesn't like parties and doesn't drink he's a rare special being, let me tell you. I think he's from Slovenia, I'm not sure. He's Eastern European either way.
They
And
all
so
drink there. It's fine.
yeah. And he's like, I don't
There's
like
not much else to
alcohol.
do, to be honest with
That's
you.
fair. It's very
He
cold.
he doesn't like alcohol. He gets really nervous. He's got high anxiety, and he's the sweetest man. I just adore him. He's always so sweet. And he always like just lots of hugs and very like, hi, it's so good to see you. Like just a sweet human. So he hosted a minis painting at this event that was in one of the suites, and it was invite only, no loud music, very soft music. And he was like, order whatever you want. All of the room services on me. I'm just happy that you're here.
Wow.
And I was sitting around painting minis for the first time in my life. And I just happened to like be in a conversation with two really good friends of mine. My friend Dan, who was diagnosed with ADHD a couple years ago, and he was going through a lot of like different medications to figure out what was working for him. And a really good friend of mine, Bernard, who I've been very close with for years. And he was like, I'm pretty sure that I have ADHD, but I'm Croatian and this doesn't exist in our country. I can't just like get an evaluation. And so I was watching this conversation between this British man and this Croatian man talking about their mental health, painting minis, and they were just like so vulnerable and so open. And I was like, this is why I love this industry. This is why I'm here, is having these moments of like connection and human interaction with people from different countries who are able to like, have these conversations with each other. This is so much more interesting to me than getting shit-faced at a bar.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Like, right? Now, on the tabletop side of things, one of the things that I've personally been seeing that I'm really fascinated by, because I don't identify with this, so I recognize the importance of it. The number of people that have sensory overload is exponential in the tabletop. I don't know why that is in tabletop, but the number of people
I think I do. I think it's because so many people who are neurodivergent, specifically autistic, who struggled with social interaction, this is a way that has structure where other people who are like, I mean, like them, like me, like can do social things and create stories and be in a space like in community with other people. And sensory overload being a very common autistic trait, like it makes a lot of sense to me.
That's totally fair. And that makes a ton of sense, which brings me to my point, which is no, it's great. It's like a great perfect segue. Sorry. I didn't mean that like in a dismissive way or anything.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just like, oh, I think I know the answer.
No, that's perfect. That's 100%. You fucking nailed it.
I've solved your puzzle.
Yeah. But that's all to say that like there's been this huge push for people that are on the spectrum, regardless of where they are in the spectrum, that are like, I want to be able to socialize, but like I don't necessarily have the tools in my tool belt, and I'm gonna get overwhelmed and I might have a meltdown. So how do we as people, like I'm not autistic and I have my own mental health situation, but I'm not autistic, so I don't get overwhelmed in situations like that. I mean, I have anxiety, so like I'm not a huge fan of like massive crowds where I can't necessarily leave. I don't think that means that I'm on some sort of, I think that is a normal thing personally. But as someone who does host events, what can I do to make sure that people feel safe at events like that, where it's not at a bar? What does that look like? And how do I host them in a way that is safe and accessible to, kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation, I'm going to look for accessibility everywhere. Just it's intrinsically built into me. And now I'm coming to a place where I'm like, how do I find accessibility for people that have sensory challenges? What does that look like? Because it is really difficult if you're an event organizer to be able to host something that is inclusive for everyone, right? So that's something that I've been like mulling over a lot recently, of like, we we would do these really small dinners at Kickstarter, which I really loved, where we would just have like maybe 12 people and we would buy out a back room and we would have a mix of as many diverse humans as possible, but also like, here's a publisher, here's a manufacturer, here's a games creator, here's a first time games creator that we just met. So we would always have like at least one spot open, and we would host these dinners and everybody would be introduced. And it was like a very, and we would take it. Nobody ordered anything. We took care of the whole menu. We got everybody's food preferences and allergies and would only, wine and beer. That's it. No hard liquor. And we put a cap on everything and mostly just served like soft drinks and water and lemonades and things like that. And then at dessert, we would have everybody stand up and everybody would move to a different part of the table so they could talk to somebody who they would normally not talk to, which was like really kind of a beautiful thing to be able to do. But that sort of intimate sort of stuff is where I see. I have no idea what my future is in the games industry, but if I'm able to host events again, that type of stuff is more of what I'm interested in doing.
Yeah.
That's rad as hell.
That's so cool.
It was cool. I don't regret leaving Kickstarter. It was time. I thought leaving when I was on top was the best thing to do. Because I was like, I can't do anything else. And I don't want to leave having my so I get to leave Kickstarter knowing that I posted the best numbers of all time as the person who was in that role in the history of that role. So far, nobody else has gotten those numbers. And I think that's awesome. And I get to hold that badge for the rest of my life. It's at some point, it's not going to matter. It's probably not going to matter next year. And that's totally fine. But I was like, I have to leave knowing this is the best that I can do. But there are parts of it that I do genuinely miss. And part of that was the ability to create community in very like controlled spaces, which I don't think I'm able to do right now. Hopefully in the future, but.
Yeah, I mean, to build off of that, actually, how would you, in the future, with what you're doing now and everything else, how would you approach building those meaningful connections, like in your ideal world, I guess you could say, like with what you have going on now? How can you take those experiences that you were just talking about and carry that into your approach going forward?
That's a great question. I think the advantage that I bring anywhere is I've been able to build a very high level of trust in this industry. So I'm really thankful that 16 years ago, almost 16 years ago, when I got my first job at Addicting Games, a month in, I was like, oh, got to treat everybody like an artist. Everybody's an artist and everybody is special and has their own needs. And I need to understand what those needs are to be the best person that I can be. And that has brought me 16 years later to have this incredible community behind me of game developers because of that trust and because of the ability to listen, which I'm really thankful for. And that's not just me, that's people giving me a chance and trusting me and seeing that this is a two-way street in that relationship. So the ability to build relationships, but also more importantly, the ability to keep those relationships, I think that allows me the opportunity to explore a lot of new interesting spaces. And a lot of that comes down to like, you can just bring me in to pretty much any company in the tabletop or video game space. And I can be like, great, what are your needs? Okay, let me see how I can figure this out. You should talk to this person. You should talk to this person. You should talk to this person. I don't know what type of a job that is, to be totally honest with you. But
business development.
Business development.
I mean, I think if you're putting a
matchmaker?
corporate name on it, it's business development.
Yeah.
If you're putting like a real world name on it, it's kind of like just being a fixer, just like knowing how to connect people the right way at the right time, kind of thing.
Hey, listen, I know a guy, all right?
I know a guy.
Yeah, like
I'm the games
Truly,
industry mob.
Truly, you are the definition of I know a guy or gal. Like I like if
I know
there's
a
a thing, it's like I've got a person for that. Like let me connect you, and it's wild to see how you've been able to do that. It's pretty it's pretty incredible.
It's like a fun, and a lot of that's just like building relationships, right? But if I'm really passionate about like maintaining those relationships, and I want people to actually connect. And this isn't I want to be really careful that I'm not like false humbling, I guess, in the sense of like, I genuinely, that is a passion of mine. Like, I want people to be able to talk to each other. I get frustrated when I'm like, why are you not talking to this person? Like, why do you feel you have to do this alone? This is dumb. You're being dumb. Stop it.
Stop
Right?
being dumb.
Yeah, like, but then of course, like, the my business brain comes in and I'm like, have you thought about have you considered? I would love to introduce you to, right?
Just get you some business cards that say "Stop being dumb."
Stop being a dummy. Yeah.
I feel like it just goes back to your initial thought process, like, oh, they're just an artist. I got it. They just might
Yeah.
not know how to like convey what they need to find who they need, kind of a thing.
Well, there is definitely like a thing in the indie games world too, where it's like you have to do it all alone because you see all these stories of like
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Like Toby Fox made Undertale all by himself, and I'm like, he had a lot of help. Like he hired a dev team.
Well, that's the
Marketing
PR
would not
too,
like that
right?
answer.
Like,
Yeah.
it's the PR of they did it alone, but did they really do it alone?
Mhm.
Probably not. In
Yeah.
99 out of 100 cases, maybe even 99.5 out of 100 cases, like it's never alone.
I mean, at the
No.
bare minimum, they had friends who tested it, right? You know, like,
Exactly. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
It's a PR story though.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's a there's a kernel of truth, but really most of it is made up,
Yeah.
right? You know? It's yeah, I don't know. I struggle with that one a lot where I'm just like, why do we have such an individualistic mindset when really at the end of the day, we say to people that if you have kids, it takes a village. Well, if your kid is your game and your art, why would it not take a village to make that happen? Why are we not assigning the same metrics?
That's a good point.
Yeah. I think it's also a bit of that like American rugged individualism and this idea that is like really antithetical to the way that humans exist of like you should be able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like you should be able to just make things happen and you shouldn't need help. And that's just not how anything works.
Yeah. I think the more that we're seeing the pushback against capitalism, I think we're seeing a little bit more of the anti-individualistic standpoint. I will say
Yeah.
that because that's something I've seen a lot with friends of mine. So I'm pretty good friends with Rami Ismail, who's like a really big deal in the indie video games world. And he's been really open and honest with like, he helps a lot of people, but he also gets a lot of help. And he would not be where he is without these people. And I think it's really important for people that can appear as like, oh, I'm an individual, right? This is my thing. This is what I do. Here's everyone who's helped me, right? Like here's this friend and this friend and this friend. Like I think it's really important to make sure that we see that there's a lineage that happens with that.
It's also like, and this is such like a microcosmic example, but like on Twitter yesterday, someone posted the like list of people behind the scenes for Dimension 20 being like, this is how many people work on this to produce what you see. Stop comparing your actual play to Dimension 20.
Yeah.
And like I feel like that's such a solid example of you need fucking people, you need money, you need resources, you need people who can own all of these little pieces of the development cycle. It's not just about like loving it enough.
Yep, 100%.
It was like 60 plus names or something on that list.
Yeah. Including companies, like big companies that make STLs, that make miniatures, that make terrain, like all of that. It's not like, Brennan just goes, all right, we're sitting at the table, we're going to record our session and this is the end of it.
No.
So
it's the same with Critical Role. It's the same, I think people see the final result and think that like, Matt Mercer's sitting behind a computer, just like editing, like doing his little. This is how he types, I assume.
he just full four fingers the keyboard.
It's a really big keyboard.
It is, yeah. And oddly, there's only 4 keys. I don't really.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't make sense.
He's just, he can do with 4 keys
good.
And his
moms. I have to say, speaking of tall energy, I met him a couple years ago at Gen Con. I thought he was going to be so tall. He is not.
Really?
Maybe 5'8".
He
Really?
comes across
Oh.
like 6'2".
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
I was
Yeah.
thinking like
Big
6'2".
6'2" energy.
Yeah.
No, not even a little bit. Like he's not tiny by any means, but he's like
Yeah.
definitely like but maybe average male height in America, which I think is 5'9".
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel
But I
you're
was
right
like, oh, you're little. Okay.
You're just a little guy. That's like, what did I say? I said something about Ben the other day. We were talking about someone's height, and I was like, they're not tall, they're Ben's height. And Ben was like, why are you using me?
No. First and foremost, that makes it sound like I got defensive about it, which I was not. I just thought it was really funny that Katie's like reference point was like, oh, that's not tall, that's like Ben's height. And I was like, to be clear, I am just perfectly, I'm like right on that average point.
Yeah.
Not tall, not short, but it was so funny. That was like the reference.
Oh my
It really
God.
tickled me. I enjoyed it immensely.
I was like, I didn't mean it like that.
Oh
How
my
tall are you,
God.
Ben? Let's just
I'm
let
like
everybody know right now.
5'9", 5'10".
Okay.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the day, I think I'm closer to 5'10". By the end of the day, I'm closer to 5'9".
No, that checks out. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
I didn't realize my ex-husband was lying to me about his height until I started dating Matt. I was with this man 11 years.
Oh.
11 years.
How
that's
tall did he
funny.
say that he was?
He said he was 6 feet and he was 5'10".
That's
So,
a
like,
big
it's not-
discrepancy.
Yeah. And I think Matt's actually taller than he says he is. I think he's more like 6'1", 6'2".
That's so
And
funny.
yeah, I was like, oh yeah, my ex-husband was like 6 feet. And then I was like, I gave Matt a hug and I was like, wait.
Hold on a second.
Wait a minute.
This is not.
I think
the math
With
is not mathing
boots on,
here.
not
right?
mathing. Yeah.
was
And
6
well,
with
he was,
boots
to be fair, he was wearing my 6-inch heels. So like, I guess,
It makes sense. It checks out. Oh God, that's funny.
What are you gonna do?
Eh,
I think it's so weird to me, and this is completely not related to anything, but like the obsession that men have with being taller than they are.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't like, it does not change my perception of you in any way if you are 5'10" or 6'2". Like, I don't care.
It's
No.
also interesting that the aspiration isn't to come across, right? To have tall energy where you know how to like take up space, not in a way that is like taking up space at the expense of others around you, but sort of like
Mhm.
you are able to fill the space that you exist in. Like both of you, Katie and Anya, right? You come across as taller than you are because you know how to sort of like hold your own in any particular setting.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why isn't that what you aspire to be, as opposed to just be like, I'm 6'1", and you're like, come on,
But you're
dude.
not.
You're like 5'11". It's fine. It's okay to be 5'11". You're still above average. You're okay. You're good. It's good.
Also, it's okay if you're below average. Let's not height shame
Also
anyone
that
here.
too.
It's fine.
Yeah, if you're 5'5", doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Still good. If you're 5 feet. Cool.
I mean, also like take a little bit of look at your patriarchal standards and understand
Yes.
that you are a victim of patriarchy and you
Yep.
need to do a little bit of work to understand that you are just a Ken and that's okay.
Just
We
like
love
having
Ken.
just like a
you know?
weird nude bulge.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, just start singing Push by Matchbox 20 and I'm in no matter what. So it's fine.
Oh
So
God, we've
there's
gotten
a
so off the rails. Where are we? What's happening?
So we're at,
Anyway, sorry.
we've officially landed on our last question, which is less about sort of like the ins and outs and more just about like looking back on your
Mhm.
on the first 16 years of what may be 160 years of working in this industry. Is there a particular project or initiative that you are like particularly proud of your involvement in, or maybe if it's more impactful, is there like an interaction that you've had or some that you've helped like set up for success that you're like, that's the moment that I like know that I really like stepped up and shown in the way that I want to support people?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a really good question. I feel really lucky that it's hard for me to narrow that down just to one interaction. And I'm like reflecting on it just in this moment. I'm like, I'm so thankful that I have many. That's such a cool thing to be able to have. I feel like there's two answers to that because I think it's two separate questions, which is like favorite project to me is a little bit different than like interaction.
Oh yeah.
So my My favorite project. Oh gosh. I'm like going through I worked on literally hundreds of projects on Kickstarter. And I would say that like no matter what, every time a Kickstarter project comes out, so like Sea of Stars, for example, was a Kickstarter project. I flew to Canada to go meet with that team and to be at a conference, and we like sat in a hotel that was a brand new hotel in Montreal, and I had a 2-hour conversation with them, and they showed me the game and they showed me the pitch, and they were like, we want to crowdfund this, and I was like, I want it. How do we make this happen? Like I want to do right by you guys. And they were wonderful to work with. So like stuff like that is super fun, right? Like the Larian Studios with Baldur's Gate, right? I worked on Divinity Original Sin, the board game with them, helped
Cool.
them through that whole process. They were so lovely. They took me out to Hot Pot where we ordered way too much
I
food.
saw those pictures and they looked so good.
It was incredible. To be fair, Michael did tell me to order 2 of everything, and so I did. And the waiter went, "We've never had anyone order this much food." And I was like, I'm mortified. But I blame Michael. And though, to be honest, with 1, 2, 3, 4, there were 6 of us, and it was like $700 total. It really wasn't that bad. Like, I thought
That's
it was
pretty
going to
good.
be like $4,000, and I was like, okay, yeah. So, anyway, but like, you know, stuff like that where I'm like, I hopefully, and if I do this, I hope people call me out for it. Like, I try to not take like credit for that. Like, all I did was help them with their crowdfunding campaign, but also being able to see them transition out of crowdfunding where like Larian's never going to do crowdfunding again. They don't have to, right? But being able to see them transition out of that and say, we never have to do this again because of the success based on our Kickstarter projects, like that's awesome. That's such a like rewarding experience for me to be able to see that happen.
Like, you don't need me anymore.
Yeah, like my little babies have got up. Like, I'm so proud of you.
They've flown out of the nest.
Yeah. My favorite project though, oh God. This is so, I don't want to say cheesy just because it's like it makes me so emotional. My favorite project ever was Trogdor the board game. So
Oh my god.
I was a child of the internet in the late 90s, early aughts, right? That's when I was in college. I was in college and Trogdor and Homestar Runner came out. And we would spend hours, like my college best friend and I would like wait for the new Homestar Runner. Like this was like our thing, right? And this was like that was my college fundamental experience. Like I was so sheltered growing up and I went to college and I could finally use the internet without being monitored. And I was like, Homestar Runner is it.
This is what I want to do with the vast power of the internet at my fingertips.
Hell yeah.
That is all I cared about was downloading music and watching Homestar Runner, which speaks to my, despite, you know, tattooed, pierced, all black goth look, how just sweet little naive being I am. Just mortifying. So that came to us at Kickstarter in 2017. And the person who was originally going to work on that project ended up leaving Kickstarter. And he was like, I want to transition this over to you. And I was like, I'm not ready. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Responsibility.
Yeah. Like, I don't think you understand. I loved Homestar Runner. And he was like, we're all in our like late to mid 30s. We all fucking loved Homestar Runner. Chill out. And I was like, okay. So I like took the call with them and just sat there. And I'm pretty sure I was like, hi, I'm Anya. It's nice to meet you. Just like was not chill.
Your voice cracked cool. Even though you're not a pubescent boy.
Yeah. Like turned like so red, and this was just on a conference call, right? Like on those old little things where you can have a conference call on.
I remember conference calls.
Yeah. So like I didn't see their face. We had no interaction with each other, and I was like, the brothers chaps. I'm talking to the brothers. I'm talking to them through a mobile device. That's fine. Oh, okay, it's fine. Like couldn't handle it. So Michael, who is the person who ended up leaving the company, he was like, I think you should take it. They want to do a board game and I think you're ready. And I was like, okay. So I ended up taking it on, and like Luke, my old boss, sort of like very, very loosely sort of like guided me, but he was just like, you're on your own. You got it. You've been here long enough. You can do this. And I ended up taking them under my wing and walking them through everything. And I was like, I think I want them in the room at PAX East 2018. I was like, I think we can make this happen, because they like don't do public appearances. They're like very shy. They have, they have families, and they live in Atlanta, and they just kind of like being by themselves. And I had like we started doing like weekly video calls, and I like built up this rapport with them. And they were so nice. And they were like, I was like, I don't know if you guys would be into this, but I think it would be really cool. Like, we could get the prototype, and we could get like a prototype built out, and we could have you come to the room at PAX East, and like I could get your wife, if your wives want badges, we can make that happen. If your kids want badges, we can make that happen. If you need a place to stay, we can make, like, what is it that you need, and I will make that happen. And I like worked my ass off just to get them there. And they were like, we're in, we'll do everything. And I was like, okay, cool, great. So I like met them in person, and they were like, oh yeah, here's our personal cell phone numbers. And I was like, I can't have that. I can't have your...
You can't give this to me. I'm not ready for this power.
This is like too much, actually. And they were like, no, like text us. We just want to know everything's okay. And I like met them, and they just like ran up to me and gave me this huge hug. I met their wives. I met their kids. And it was basically 4 days where we just like bonded. And so I took them to dinner, and it was really cute. We had this like Kickstarter dinner that we threw, and I had two friends that were in town that were volunteering with another studio. They were music friends of mine. And I was texting them, and I was like, do you guys want to come to this dinner? The Brothers Chaps are going to be there. And they were like, yes. So they like come, and I have this adorable photo of my friend Ryan sitting next to Matt Chapman, and he's just like this. Can't handle it. And they're just dudes. Like, they're just dudes. Everything that I preach of like, they're just humans. Like, we're all just people trying to make cool shit. This is all to say, project did phenomenal, right? I introduced them to Wormwood, so they had like a Wormwood exclusive. I got them a community manager. I got them a publisher. Like, I did all this work for them, and they ended up becoming friends of mine. I can text Matt Chapman anytime, and he will respond. A year later, Funk Rest, the band that I'm in, we ran a Kickstarter, and they backed the Kickstarter.
Aww.
And it was really sweet, because also Christopher Tin, who did the music for Civ 6, backed the Kickstarter, and he texted me a photo of himself wearing a Funk Rest shirt, and he was like, I love Funk Rest. So like all my games friends started backing like this, this record that we were making, and they were like, no, like you support us all the time, we're to support you. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing that happens, that's cool. But we were filming a music video, and for some reason we just started singing a bunch of like Homestar Runner stuff. And so I like took a video and like immediately texted Matt, and I was like, oh, we're just, doing this silly video shoot, whatever. And he just was like, oh my God, this made my day. This is so cool. I love this so much. And we don't see each other as often, we just sort of run into each other here and there. But every time we see each other, it's just like, that is a like legitimate relationship that I am so like lucky and privileged to have, that like meet your heroes and they're great sometimes.
It's
occasionally they do all right.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen all the time.
It doesn't happen all the time, but they are like just some of the most incredible humans, and I loved working on that project. It funded. They were like, "Oh, we don't know if we're gonna fund," and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" They were like, "Anya, I don't think you understand." Also, like when I had them in the room, they had these Homestar Runner puppets made, and so Matt came out in this like cape and like sat down and had this Homestar puppet and did every single game demo as Homestar Runner with the puppet. And I had to do crowd control. I had to like introduce them. It was just this like wild experience, like literally working with like a internet celebrity. It was just like, I was like, I cannot believe this. By the end of the con, we had set a table up on the side of the Kickstarter room, and he was doing these personalized videos for people as Homestar. We had a line of people where people were like, oh, my friend has cancer, is there any way that you could just do like a shout out? And I was like, I can't believe this. And I was like, I checked in with him constantly. I was like throwing like cough drops at him. And I was like, are you good? I can shut this down. Like, let me know. This is about you and your comfort level. And he was like, I can't believe that you are allowing me to do this. Like, this is such an incredible thing I get to do for people. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh,
Just like went home and like sobbed for like a week. I was like, I cannot believe that I got to do this. Like, all just because they wanted to make a board game and crowdfund it.
That's so cool.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
I love that
wow.
there was any question in their minds that it might get funded. Like, do you know?
Do you know
How?
who you are?
Like,
Yeah.
are you aware of the
Yeah.
love that you have cultivated through?
They had
like,
no idea. They were
that's
like, no,
wild.
they were like, it's been 10 years. I don't think anybody really cares about us. And like, it is not because of me. I want to be very clear. I was a small part of the resurgence of Trogdor. Because they suddenly just like, because the board game came out and there was this resurgence of Homestar Runner. And I was like, I got to be a part of that. Like, it's so cool that like,
Sick.
and now every time I see Trogdor stuff, I'm like, yay, like I know them, like those are my friends. Like it's just like such a rewarding experience. There's a really funny photo of me in the Kickstarter office the minute it funded. I like found out it funded, and because I was at lunch and I like came running back to my desk, and I was like jumping up and down, so excited for them. And it's the photo of me standing there in the middle of summer, like bunned, sweating my ass off in New York City, just fist pumping in the air. Someone like took a photo of me the exact moment, and I was like, I
That's
love
such
that I
an
get to
epic
have
photo
this.
to have.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah. So like,
Particularly with it being such like an important
mhm.
moment. That's awesome.
Yeah. And like, I don't want to diminish it by any means. It was a $1 million campaign. Those were not uncommon in Kickstarter in those days. So like it did great, but they were just like, I can't, like they funded and they texted me and they were like, can you believe this is happening? And I was like, yes. Like, what is going on here? I cannot believe, like, how can you not like stop it?
May I introduce you to the word nostalgia?
Yeah. Yeah. They just
Yeah.
like, I was like, you guys are basically like the dashboard confessional of the internet. Like,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
an apt metaphor.
I say this as someone who like saw the Postal Service and Death Cab for Cutie last night.
Oh,
Oh
you
my
were
God,
at
I'm
that? Oh, you got to
so
see this tour?
jealous.
Mhm.
I did not get to see it. Ugh.
I was sobbing the whole time. I was
That's
like,
amazing.
Ben, I love you. Like,
I understand these emotions.
Very, very last question, which is not even really a question, but is something we ask everyone. Is there anything coming up for you, whether it's a project or, you know, potentially a venture that you are taking on that you would like to plug?
one of those things I can't talk about yet,
Okay.
which we will get into at some point, I'm sure. I would say for games related stuff, I mean, in general, people just want to like contact me. I'm down to chat. I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful about how much free advice I'm giving out these days.
As you should be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if it's we want you to like give us the full like scoop on how to run a crowdfunding project properly, we can have a conversation of what that looks like, but I'm always happy to give people like look at your project and give you feedback. That's totally fine, no problem. I would say from the other side of my life, which is music, I have a record coming out with a Gen X ska band called Barbicide.
I'm crying. I'm so sorry. That's amazing.
What?
It's an offshoot of the 90s satanic ska band Mephistopheles. And
Nice.
two of the original founding members started a new ska band called Barbicide. But their record's coming out October 13th. The new Funk Rest record should be coming out, if not the end of this year or the beginning of next year. We have a bunch of stuff going on. Our Instagram is, well, I'm supposed to be running our Instagram, but I've been failing. But that's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's all good.
You running anything technology based just feels like a bad decision.
I'm okay at social media. I'm
Okay.
pretty okay. Although I did something on Threads or no, Blue Sky that I didn't realize was very boomer. And my DM, who also is the head of engineering at Kickstarter, was like, "Yo, you just did the most boomer shit." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that I could like reply in Blue Sky." And I just kept making new, like I was responding to myself. And
Oh
he
my
was
God,
like,
Anya.
"You need to stop. This is really embarrassing."
I was gonna say my secondhand embarrassment's kicking in.
Yeah,
A
that's
little bit.
bad.
And it was
I
like
love
this
you, but
very
that's
like,
bad.
oh no, it was bad. It was this very like personal, like I was like
Ben's
talking
face
about
is
the,
actively turning red at the thought of you doing that.
I'm gonna match my jacket soon.
yeah. And I said, "Oh well, like I own
Whatever.
it. It's fine."
This-
Oh, I had a boomer moment when I went to see Matt, my boyfriend, play at the Blue Note, where I like walked in and I was like, "Oh, I might order a drink. I don't know, we'll see." And they had a QR code, and you had to download an app with the QR code instead of it just like popping up as like a menu on like a
Well,
web
that's
page.
a them problem, if I'm
That's a
being
them problem.
honest.
I audibly said out loud, "Fuck this! I'm not downloading a new app."
Okay, in literally any other circumstance, that's a boomer move. But I think in this particular one, you are very justified.
Yeah,
I
that
think
is.
too.
Yeah.
Not
I just
everything needs an app. I agree with
No,
that.
I said that out loud. I was like, "Not everything needs an app."
Take me your
And they
damn
were like,
website.
yeah, and the guys behind me were like, "We just ordered from the bar," and I was like, "Okay, thank you. So this is a normal venue." Like, so
I can just
incredulous.
go and order my drink from a bartender. Okay.
Yeah. And I did the like accidental Karen thing where I was like looking around for confirmation that I was correct and I was not, and I was like, "I'm going to just moonwalk out of here." Like,
Oh, man.
It could have
so
been
bad.
worse. You could have
So-
asked for a paper menu. You could have been like, "Do you just
Ugh.
have something I can read?"
And then
Honestly,
like
I
brought my
feel like
phone out
that
with a
all the time,
flashlight.
though.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh,
I just want to
yeah.
read the menu. Like, don't make me read it on my phone. Just like let me hold it in my hands.
Especially if like they don't have great reception and also not free Wi-Fi. You're like, so you want me to go to your website that I can maybe load in 15 minutes because you don't have a minute. This is
Yeah,
a
we've
total
gotten
inside.
somewhere else again, though. I would say I don't know how we got here. I
Sorry.
don't know what route we took.
It's
Yeah.
So
It's a boomer
Anya,
moment.
thank you so much for being here. It was so wonderful to get to talk to you. You have
Yeah.
such an interesting perspective on the industry, and it was very informative for me. I'm sure it was also very informative for Ben and Zeki and anyone else who happens to listen to this episode. So thank you so much. And until next time, I'm Katie.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Zeki.
And this has been How the Fuck?
We gotta get you to come back and talk about music next time.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Also, thanks for having me. I want to make sure I extend the thank you. I want to make sure that is very well known. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to let me ramble.
Oh my God,
Oh my
it was
God.
amazing.
This has been a blast.
Yes. Come ramble anytime.
I will ramble about music and my thoughts and feelings about how the music
Yes.
industry as a performer compared to being a game developer is very similar and also incredibly different.
I love it. I love it.
Stay tuned next
yeah,
week
we
when
could.
we release.
Yeah, we could easily talk about that for hours.
I love it.
You know what I should do right now? I'm going to end this recording because we don't need all of this for Zeki to have to
fair,
clip at the end.
fair. Yeah, Zeki, you're gonna have to clip all this out.
I mean, that's easy. It's just like,
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone.
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Kay Zeki,
And I'm Sam Alisea.
and on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating,
But flawed.
and we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.